of the things that came out in today's G6 panel is the fact that there's no longer an either-or for outsourcing and shared services. It was remarkable to hear the providers talk about a range of solutions and clients moving along a journey to embrace either outsourcing or shared services depending on their specific needs at the time. In fact, one of the panelists today made a very telling remark. Decide what you want for the business, then determine what sourcing strategy is best for you. And that's a major change for our crop of outsourcing providers. Any consultancy is highly dependent upon the skills of the actual consultant. Although we buy firms, we do buy expertise. And the marketplace for sourcing advisory is changing very rapidly because of two factors. Number one, clients are becoming more sophisticated as they complete and bed down multiple deals. They are building a fair amount of expertise. They know how to structure a contract. They know how to transition. They know how to govern. So, in effect, many advisors have put themselves out of business by building a more expert client base. I think that's number one. Number two, the provider community has evolved, and with greater client knowledge about what a provider can do and the provider's ability to help the client solve problems together, quite frankly, to quote an English term, it puts some of the sourcing advisors in a piggy in the middle position. Having said that, there's always a rule for the right sourcing advisor with the right client. A comment that was made today is that sourcing advisors can help move a process along and help a client who has a conviction about sourcing, but perhaps not the arms and legs, perhaps not the discipline, actually consummate a deal. If you look at the provider base that we have today, with scale, with reach, and with scope, there is a different approach to the marketplace. There's a different leadership approach than providers, particularly in the business process space, who are still feeling their way. So there's a different, one of the things I saw today was a slightly different level of confidence. And part of that was purview. We had two global firms. Both global firms had a more pragmatic, tell it as it is, approach to the market than some of the offshore providers who are still developing the networks and the relationships with clients. Transformation is what you aspire to. Transformation may be as small as changing a process flow, or it may be as large as changing the culture of a certain portion of the company's delivery organization. But it is not a term of art. It is a term that's very specific to what the client wants to get out of a change in business model. And I think the other comment which I would make is a discussion about innovation. I wasn't convinced. And what I heard today in terms of definition of innovation, for the most part, was what I would call renovation. There's a difference between building a new house and renovating an existing house to make it better. And I think that what we term innovation is fundamentally renovation. It's not really game changers. Now, one of the panelists talked a little bit about a collaborative relationship with clients that allows them to change the game. But some of the responsibility has to be placed on the client until the client allows itself to work effectively with a provider and gives up a level of control, because to get innovation, you have to give up control. We're not going to see great innovation in this marketplace, and perhaps it's not time yet. What do you want to achieve? And clients who fundamentally wish to achieve cost savings, but mask it in the cloak of innovation or globalization, are kidding themselves. Unfortunately, that sort of lack of clarity sets the client up for disappointment. The provider is led down the primrose path. The economics are not congruous. The relationship structure does not serve the client's needs. So I think one of our panelists was absolutely correct. Put a mirror up to your face and decide what you want to see. Underlying all the comments today was really the concept of change. And while, for my taste, we're really not looking at change management as deeply as we ought to, I think there's a growing acknowledgement that when we source, whether it's outsourcing or shared services, we're really changing the world order of the way a company works. We're changing the enablers, where the work is done, who does the work, perhaps the technology of the work. We're changing the rules, which mean policies and procedures and workflow. We're changing the performance metrics. I mean, ultimately, we set up shared services and enter into outsourcing relationships to change the metrics, change the performance of what we do. But last but not least, and I think the panelists touched upon it in a very brief way today, is we're changing the culture of an organization. And according to my research, there are about 20 things that change. We're changing control. We're changing the relationship between employee and employer. We're changing the relationship between business lines or business lines and enabling units. We're changing careers. We're changing capabilities.